Xiao Zhang returned to Linyu on a Tuesday that smelled of rain and burnt sugar. The train station looked exactly as it had 5 years ago, only his reflection on the glass had changed: older eyes, thinner smile, a suitcase that carried more guilt than clothes. He told himself he came home because his contract ended, because the city was too loud, because success tasted strangely like metal. The truth was simpler and more painful. He was tired of running from a family he loved but never understood. The first person he saw was not his mother, not his father, but old Chen, the noodle seller who had once sworn Xiao Zhang would become either a star or a criminal. "Ah! The big city hero," the old man shouted. "Did you bring back a wife or only bad habits?" "Only bad habits," Xiao Zhang answered, and both of them laughed as if the joke were not half true. The house waited at the end of the familiar street, its blue gate peeling like an old scab. His mother opened the door before he could knock, as if she had been standing there since dawn arguing with the air. "You finally remembered the address," she said. "I used the smell of your chili oil as a map," he replied. She tried to stay angry, truly she did, but mothers are poorly designed for long-term coldness. She hugged him with the force of a small natural disaster, then immediately complained he was too thin, too pale, too city-like, whatever that meant. His father, however, specialized in silence. The old man sat in the living room pretending to read a newspaper from last month. He turned the pages with the seriousness of someone defusing a bomb. Xiao Zhang greeted him, the newspaper answered. Mei, his younger sister and professional chaos generator, broke the tension by jumping onto his back. "Go! Did you bring me a rich brother-in-law? Or at least a rich suitcase?" "I brought you a poor brother and expired cookies," he said, handing her both. That night they ate together like a family relearning an old song. The soup was too salty, the chicken too heroic in size, and the conversation walked carefully around the years of absence. Xiao Zhang told funny stories about auditions gone wrong, how he once cried in a romantic scene only to realize the director wanted a villainous laugh, how he lived on instant noodles until even the noodles begged for mercy. Mei laughed so hard rice flew from her nose, and even his father coughed suspiciously behind the newspaper. Yet beneath the laughter something heavy slept, breathing slowly. The next morning he met Linyu. She appeared at the market like a paragraph the universe had forgotten to finish. Same bright eyes, same stubborn chin, but wrapped now in the calm confidence of a woman who had learned to live without him. She was buying apples and arguing with the seller about philosophy, because of course she was. "Xiao Zhang," she said, tasting his name as if checking whether it had expired too. "Linyu," he answered, suddenly aware his hands had forgotten what to do. They walked beside the river where they once planned their escape from Linyu. Back then they were two children convinced love was a bus that would arrive exactly on schedule. Now the river looked wiser, slightly amused by their reunion. "You left without a word," she said. "I left with too many words. None of them brave enough." She nodded, accepting the answer the way people accept imperfect weather. Before they could say more, Uncle Hao emerged from behind a tree like a dramatic pigeon. The old man claimed he had important information about Xiao Zhang's family and waved a notebook filled with drawings that looked suspiciously like bored chickens. "Your father owes money," Uncle Hao whispered, "to people whose smiles are sharper than my wife's kitchen knives." Xiao Zhang laughed it off, but that evening he heard voices leaking through the thin wall, his parents arguing about debts, about a business that had died quietly, about the Liang family whose names sounded like thunder wrapped in silk. He lay awake counting the cracks on the ceiling, realizing he had not returned to a peaceful home but to a battlefield wearing pajamas. To distract himself he searched the attic and found his old guitar. The strings were loose like tired dreams. He played a chord and the instrument complained in 3 different languages. Still, the sound carried him back to days when the future looked like a wide, obedient dog. Linyu visited again, bringing oranges and courage. She listened to him play and said, "Your music is still handsome. Unlike you." cruel woman, he laughed. I aged artistically. They decided to organize a small concert to raise money for his father's debt. The plan was ridiculous enough to be hopeful. May declared herself manager and designed posters where Xiao Zhang looked like a romantic hero suffering from constipation. Rehearsals turned the house into a circus. Neighbors came pretending to help but mostly to eat snacks. His father continued to ignore everything while secretly fixing the stage lights. His mother prayed loudly for success and quietly for her son's heart. Between songs Lin Yu confessed she had waited for him longer than she cared to admit. The words landed on his chest like warm rain. He wanted to answer with something heroic, but his mouth produced only nervous weather reports. Meanwhile, the Liang family sent their representative, Mr. Luo, a man whose shoes were shinier than his soul. He delivered polite threats wrapped in elegant envelopes. May used one as a bookmark and lost it inside a cookbook. Tell your father the deadline is a month, Mr. Luo said, smiling at Xiao Zhang as if they were discussing tea flavors. That night the black car returned and parked across the street, a silent punctuation mark at the end of their laughter. The concert approached like an exam nobody had studied for. Xiao Zhang practiced until his fingers felt borrowed. He sang not for fame but for the chance to keep his family's roof from becoming a memory. Sometimes he imagined the audience throwing tomatoes, sometimes he imagined his father finally looking at him without the newspaper shield. On the evening before the event, a storm visited Lin Yu. Rain beat the windows like impatient relatives. The electricity flickered, and May shouted, "If the ghosts cut the power tomorrow, we'll charge them double." Xiao Zhang stood alone on the temporary stage in their courtyard. The wet air smelled of earth and possibility. He thought about the city lights he had chased, about the applause that never warmed him, about the simple soup of his mother and the complicated silence of his father. Most of all he thought about Lin Yu, whose smile waited at the edge of every decision. He realized the real performance was not the concert but the choice ahead, between the man he pretended to be and the son he had forgotten to remain. From the street the engine of the black car started, then stopped, as if listening. The door of his life, he understood, had never truly closed, it had only been waiting for him to push it open with trembling hands. The day of the concert arrived wearing an innocent face, as if it had no intention of turning their lives upside down. The sky was unusually kind, a soft blue stretched over Lin Yu like freshly ironed hope. May ran around the courtyard giving orders she invented on the spot. She wore a headset borrowed from a neighbor and spoke into it even though it wasn't connected to anything. Testing. Testing. If the singer faints, throw water, not tomatoes, she announced. Xiao Zhang stood backstage, technically behind a curtain made from his mother's best bedsheet, trying to convince his heart to behave. Lin Yu adjusted his collar with the seriousness of a general preparing a soldier for war. You look like a man about to propose or about to escape through the bathroom window, she said. Both options are tempting, he answered. The audience arrived slowly, aunties with folding fans, uncles pretending they were forced by their wives, children interested only in the free candy. Even his father sat in the front row, still carrying a newspaper like a shield from emotions. The first song went well. The second even better. Xiao Zhang felt the old magic return, not the glittering stage magic of the city but something warmer, shaped like home. He sang about trains that forget to stop and hearts that forget to leave. Lin Yu watched from the side, her eyes louder than any applause. Then the black car appeared at the end of the street. Mr. Luo stepped out with two men who looked like they practiced smiling in a mirror and still failed. They stood among the crowd like commas in the wrong sentence. Xiao Zhang's voice trembled for a second but he continued, turning fear into a note slightly higher than planned. During the break, Mr. Luo approached the stage. Beautiful performance, he said. But music does not pay debts, unfortunately. It pays for courage, Xiao Zhang replied before realizing how foolish it sounded. The man chuckled and handed him a new envelope, thicker than the previous one. Inside was not only a reminder of money but a contract bearing his father's signature, proof that the old man had borrowed to save a failing factory years ago. A factory that once employed half the town and died quietly like a loyal dog. Xiao Zhang confronted his father behind the house where the smell of fried garlic pretended nothing serious was happening. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. The old man finally lowered the newspaper forever. "Because a father should be a roof, not another storm." They stood facing each other, two proud mountains too stubborn to move. For the first time Xiao Zhang saw how tired his father looked, how many winters had secretly settled on his shoulders. "I will fix this," Xiao Zhang said. "You already left once to fix your life," his father answered. "I won't let you sell your future for my past." Their argument was interrupted by Mei shouting that someone had eaten all the performers' dumplings and the suspect was Uncle Hao, who claimed it was an act of patriotic hunger. The concert resumed with forced brightness. Xiao Zhang dedicated a song to all families who fight because they love too loudly. Some aunties cried, one uncle snored emotionally. After the final applause, Lin Yu pulled him aside. "There's another way," she whispered. "My company is looking for a brand ambassador. It's good money. But it means you must return to the city." The city, the word tasted like both medicine and poison. He looked at his family laughing near the snack table, at his father pretending not to be proud, at Mei collecting coins like a victorious pirate. "Leaving again might break them," he said. "Staying might break you," Lin Yu replied gently. Before he could answer, chaos chose its favorite seat. One of Mr. Luo's men accused Uncle Hao of stealing their car mirror. Uncle Hao swore he only borrowed the reflection to check his hairstyle. Shouting grew into pushing into a small earthquake of human stupidity. Xiao Zhang jumped between them, using the only martial art he knew, apologizing repeatedly. A punch flew toward him but landed on the drum instead, producing a surprisingly musical sound. Police sirens arrived like late teachers. The crowd scattered, leaving behind half-eaten buns and confused dignity. Mr. Luo adjusted his tie and warned, "1 week, Mr. Xiao. After that, music will not protect anyone." That night the family counted the money from the concert. It was touching, beautiful, and painfully insufficient. Even Mei's optimistic calculator sighed. Rain returned as if it had forgotten something earlier. Xiao Zhang sat on the roof watching the town blink under wet lights. Lin Yu joined him with 2 cups of tea that tasted like brave decisions. "If you go back to the city, I'll go with you," she said. "And if I stay? Then I'll stay and complain about you every day." He laughed, then grew serious. "Between love and family, why does the heart need to choose?" "Because life enjoys difficult hobbies," she answered. Below them his parents spoke softly in the kitchen, trying to sound normal for their children. Mei practiced signing imaginary autographs in case her brother became famous again. The black car was gone, but its shadow remained parked inside his thoughts. Xiao Zhan realized the story of his return was not about paying a debt, it was about paying attention, to wounds ignored, to love postponed, to a version of himself still waiting at the train station of 5 years ago. He took the guitar and played a new melody, uncertain but honest. Lin Yu rested her head on his shoulder, and for a moment the world behaved. Yet somewhere in the town, Mr. Luo was making a phone call that would change the rules of the game, and the Liang family was preparing a move no song could soften. The night learned to scream quietly, and the next episode of their lives sharpened its teeth. The morning after the chaotic concert, Lin Yu woke up pretending nothing extraordinary had happened, which was the town's favorite survival technique. The noodle seller still argued with the vegetables, the buses still arrived late with professional confidence, and the river still flowed as if it had never witnessed human stupidity. Only Xiao Zhan felt different, as if someone had secretly replaced his blood with restless birds. He visited the old factory that afternoon, the place where his father's debt had been born. The building stood at the edge of town like an exhausted animal. Broken windows blinked at him, weeds grew through the concrete with stubborn optimism. He remembered coming here as a child, bringing lunch for his father and believing machines were magical creatures that ate metal and produced miracles. Now the miracle smelled of rust. Uncle Hao appeared beside him out of nowhere, because Uncle Hao believed privacy was a disease invented by selfish people. I investigated the Liang family, the old man whispered dramatically. They are not just businessmen. They are collectors of souls with very expensive shoes. Did you learn this from your detective pigeons? Xiao Zhang asked. From the barber. More reliable than pigeons. According to the barber, the Liang family wanted the land beneath the factory for a luxury resort. The debt was only a polite knife aimed at his father's throat. If the payment failed, the property would be swallowed like a peanut. Xiao Zhang returned home carrying this information like a heavy invisible backpack. At dinner he confronted his parents again. His mother cried into the soup, his father stared at the wall as if it owed him an explanation. I borrowed the money to save jobs, the old man finally said. I failed. A man should pay for his failures. Not alone, Xiao Zhang answered. Lin Yu brought news of her own. The company in the city truly wanted him as ambassador, billboards, commercials, a shiny second chance. The payment would cover the debt twice over. It sounded like a fairy tale written by accountants. But the contract is cruel, she warned. 3 years exclusive. No small-town concerts, no disappearing to solve family dramas. So they want a smiling statue, he said. They want Xiao Zhang the product, not Xiao Zhang the son. The choice grew teeth. Meanwhile, Mei decided to help by starting an online campaign called Save Uncle Zhao's Ancient Face and Factory. She posted childhood photos of her father looking confused next to machines, and videos of Xiao Zhang singing while washing dishes. The internet responded with hearts, jokes, and several marriage proposals for both siblings. Humor kept them breathing, but tension lived under every pillow. One evening Mr. Luo visited again, this time without his polite smile. He brought documents, deadlines, and a story Xiao Zhang had never heard. Years ago the Liang family and his father had been partners. A betrayal, real or imagined, had turned friendship into elegant warfare. Your name is valuable now, Mr. Luo said, studying Xiao Zhang like a price tag. Sign with our entertainment branch, endorse our resort project, and the debt disappears like a shy ghost. So this was never about money, Xiao Zhang realized. It's about owning me. It is about cooperation, the man corrected. After he left, the house felt smaller. His father begged him not to sign, his mother begged him to live, Mei begged everyone to stop begging because it gave her a headache. Lin Yu struggled with jealousy. She tried to hide behind practical advice. If you sign with them, we might not see each other again, she admitted one night by the river. And if I don't, my family loses everything. They argued softly, the worst kind of argument, full of love and impossible mathematics. Xiao Zhang wondered why adulthood required so many knives. The turning point arrived unexpectedly through comedy. Uncle Hao, attempting to spy on the Liang office, accidentally joined their yoga class and was mistaken for a new instructor. From the stretching mat he overheard that the family planned to demolish not only the factory but half the old neighborhood, including Lin Yu's bookstore. Anger finally gave Xiao Zhang clear eyesight. He gathered the townspeople for a meeting in the courtyard. Aunties brought snacks as weapons of solidarity. Even his father spoke, voice trembling like a beginner's violin, about dignity and roofs and the right to remain imperfect. We will fight, Xiao Zhang declared, surprising himself with the size of his courage. Plans formed, legal aid from a cousin who studied law for 2 semesters, a new concert tour across nearby towns, and Mei's unstoppable internet circus. Lin Yu designed posters with his face looking heroic instead of constipated this time. Yet victory required one more ingredient, the truth about the old betrayal. His father finally confessed that he had once refused to sell the land to the Liangs because it would destroy homes. The debt was revenge dressed as business. That night Xiao Zhang dreamed of trains again, but this time they waited for his permission to depart. At the episode's end he stood before two contracts on the table, one from the city promising fame without roots, another from the Liangs promising safety without soul. Between them lay a blank page where he could write a third path with his own trembling handwriting. Outside, Lin Yu laughed at something Mei said, his mother hummed an old song, and his father repaired the broken gate. The battle between love and family was no longer a question. It had become a journey, and Xiao Zhang finally began to walk. The plan to fight the Liang family began with optimism and ended on the first day with a broken microphone, a confused lawyer cousin, and Uncle Hao accidentally printing 500 posters of Xiao Zhang with rabbit ears. Mei declared it creative marketing, while Xiao Zhang considered temporary amnesia. Yet beneath the comedy, determination grew roots. The townspeople formed a committee that argued more than it worked but loved louder than it complained. Lin Yu turned her bookstore into headquarters. Between shelves of poetry and dusty history, strategies were born like stubborn children. Xiao Zhan started a small tour across neighboring towns. The stages were humble, school halls that smelled of chalk, markets that smelled of brave fish, but the audiences were sincere. He sang not as a former almost star but as a son borrowing courage from strangers. Each ticket sold felt like a brick placed back into his family's crumbling wall. One night after a performance, a young reporter approached him. She asked why he refused the glamorous city contract everyone was gossiping about. Because success that costs a home is only expensive loneliness, he answered, surprising even himself. The interview went viral. Mei screamed so loudly the chickens in the yard filed a complaint. However, fame has two faces. The Liang family launched their counterattack with elegant cruelty, articles questioning his father's integrity, rumors about Xiao Zhan's failed career, anonymous comments calling the whole campaign a circus led by sentimental clowns. Mei read them aloud with dramatic voices and turned insults into jokes, but some words still bit like small cold dogs. Amid this storm, another secret surfaced. Lin Yu confessed she had once worked briefly for a subsidiary of the Liang Group before opening the bookstore. She had left after discovering documents about the factory land. Fear had kept her silent. "You will think I betrayed you," she said, hands trembling like guilty leaves. "I think you were protecting yourself," Xiao Zhan answered, though a thin crack opened inside his trust. Their relationship entered a season of careful steps. Love remained, but it walked with bandaged feet. Meanwhile his father grew ill from stress. Doctors spoke in gentle puzzles about blood pressure and the importance of peace, as if peace were sold in pharmacies. Xiao Zhan felt the weight of time for the first time, how parents slowly become children and children suddenly become roofs. Determined to expose the truth, he visited the Liang headquarters with Lin Yu and the confused lawyer cousin whose main legal strategy was quoting movies confidently. They requested access to old partnership records. Mr. Luo greeted them with a smile sharp enough to shave clouds. "History is a flexible animal," he said. "Be careful it does not bite your own tail." In the archive room, between files that smelled of sleeping decades, Lin Yu found a letter proving the Liangs had forged part of the debt interest. It was a small weapon, but weapons begin small. As they celebrated with cheap noodles, Xiao Zhan felt hope return like a shy cat. He imagined telling his father, imagined the factory breathing again, imagined a future where he could love Lin Yu without counting coins. But stories enjoy surprises. That evening a mysterious sponsor offered to fund the legal battle, an anonymous donor who insisted on meeting only Xiao Zhan. The meeting place was an old tea house where the chairs complained more than the customers. The donor removed her sunglasses and revealed a face from another chapter of his life, Su Han, a former co-star from the city, elegant as winter and equally cold. She admired his courage, she said, and wanted to help. Yet her eyes carried calculations wearing silk dresses. Accept my support, Su Han smiled, and return to the stage with me. The world misses our chemistry. Jealousy knocked loudly inside Xiao Zhang's chest. He imagined Lin Yu's reaction, the newspaper's fireworks, the delicate bridge he had just rebuilt with his family. I need time, he answered. Time, unfortunately, was a luxury already sold out. On his way home he found the gate broken and his father sitting quietly in the dark yard. Another warning had arrived from the Liangs, this one without envelopes, delivered by silence and fear. Xiao Zhang hugged the old man, feeling how thin the once strong shoulders had become. Humor, music, and courage suddenly seemed like paper shields. That night he stood again on the roof with his guitar. Lin Yu joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea and a heart full of unasked questions. He told her about Su Han. So ghosts from the city have good timing, she said, attempting a smile. I only want one ghost, he replied, touching her hand. Below them the town slept, unaware that tomorrow would demand a price from each dream. Xiao Zhan understood that the war was no longer only against the Liang family, it was against his own doubts, against the seductive voice that promised easy escape, against the fragile line between ambition and betrayal. The map of invisible wounds unfolded inside him, and he prepared to walk through it barefoot. The town of Linyu had never known such noise. Reporters wandered the streets like confused migratory birds, chasing a story that suddenly smelled larger than a simple family debt. Mei enjoyed the attention far too much. She practiced waving to imaginary fans while carrying bags of vegetables. Gu, if fame gets any bigger, we must buy chickens with sunglasses, she declared. Xiao Zhan smiled, but inside his chest a storm rehearsed its performance. The evidence Lin Yu had found was strong enough to scare the Liang family, yet dangerous enough to scare everyone else. Mr. Luo invited him to a friendly conversation, a phrase that sounded like a bouquet hiding snakes. They met at a luxurious restaurant where the chairs looked more expensive than human dreams. Mr. Luo placed a new contract on the table, thicker, sweeter, and more poisonous. Sign this, cooperate with our resort project, and we will forget the past, he said. Your family will be safe. You will be celebrated again. And if I refuse? Then history will become very creative. Xiao Zhan left without touching the pen, feeling as if he had escaped a beautifully decorated prison. At home, another battle waited. Su Han arrived unexpectedly, bringing gifts and memories dressed in elegant perfume. She reminded him of the city lights, the applause, the version of himself that once believed he was born to be admired. Come back with me, she whispered. You were made for larger skies. Lin Yu watched from the doorway, silence standing between the two women like a jealous wall. That night their argument burned hotter than any threat from the Liangs. Maybe she's right, Lin Yu said, tears refusing to obey gravity. Maybe your life is not here with broken roofs and stubborn people. My life is wherever my heart stops running, Xiao Zhan answered, though even he was not sure where that place existed. The turning point came through his father. The old man, weak but proud, handed Xiao Zhan a small box containing the original partnership letter, proof that the Liangs had betrayed him first. He had hidden it for years out of fear and shame. I was protecting you, his father said. But protection can also be cowardice. With this evidence, they decided to hold a public press conference during the town festival, the only event large enough to force truth into the sunlight. Mei organized everything with the discipline of a cheerful dictator. The day arrived with drums, lanterns, and anxiety wearing holiday clothes. Just as Xiao Zhan began to speak on stage, the electricity died. The screen showing the documents went black. Panic spread like spilled ink. From the crowd Mr. Luo smiled. Then Lin Yu climbed onto the stage holding a portable projector powered by a car battery she had borrowed heroically. The evidence shown on the wall of the old factory, numbers, signatures, lies exposed like shy criminals. The crowd roared. Reporters attacked their cameras like hungry lions. The Liang family's elegant fortress cracked. But victory demanded a final sacrifice. To strengthen the case, Xiao Zhang needed to testify in the city court and sign a temporary contract with Su Han's agency to fund the legal process. It meant leaving again, this time not as a runaway son but as a soldier carrying his family's flag. He looked at Lin Yu. She nodded, tears and pride sharing the same seat in her eyes. Go, she said. And this time, remember the way back. Months passed with the speed of a difficult dream. The court battle in the city felt like walking through a forest made of paperwork. Xiao Zhang testified, sang at charity events, and learned that justice often moved slower than elderly turtles. Su Han kept her promise, supporting him without crossing the line again. She even admitted one evening, "You belong to another story. I was only a comma." In Lin Yu guarded the bookstore and his family with quiet strength. May turned the campaign into a national movement. Her online videos mixed humor and courage so skillfully that even politicians looked jealous. Finally the verdict arrived. The Liang family was found guilty of fraud, the debt declared illegal, the factory land returned to the town. Mr. Luo disappeared like a bad smell after rain. Xiao Zhang came home on a train that felt lighter than air. At the station his mother cried before the train fully stopped, his father pretended not to cry while crying professionally, and May jumped onto him like a joyful meteor. Lin Yu waited a little behind them, smiling the kind of smile that repairs years. That evening the town organized a celebration. The old factory lights were turned on again, not for machines but for music. Xiao Zhang sang on the same stage where everything had begun, his voice carrying not ambition but gratitude. Between songs he spoke to the crowd. "I once believed I had to choose between love and family," he said. "Today I know they are the same door seen from different sides." His father shook his hand like meeting a new friend. His mother fed everyone until surrender. May announced she would become his official manager and demanded a salary and snacks. After the crowd left, Xiao Zhan and Lin Yu walked by the river. The water reflected their faces like a patient mirror. "So, superstar," she teased, "what will you do now?" "I will stay," he answered. "And when I leave, it will be with a return ticket in my pocket and you in my future." She laughed, pretending to consider the offer. "I accept, but only if you promise to argue with me every Sunday." "Deal." They sealed the agreement with a kiss that tasted of oranges and second chances. The factory later became a community art center. The town discovered new dreams wearing old shoes. Xiao Zhan continued to sing, sometimes in big cities, often in small streets, but always with the same heart that had finally learned where home lived. And whenever someone asked him about the hardest role he ever played, he answered without hesitation. Being a son who learned to become a man. The door between love and family no longer asked him to choose. It simply opened. The end.